You've spelunked into the Matt Cave. Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Matt Cave. Thank you all so much for spelunking on by. This week, well, the seasons are coming to an end. The chance for the Utah Hockey Club is no longer a chance. It was out of their hands, but it is still a disappointment with like 3 or 4 games left to go. The Utah Jazz never stood a chance, but they do have a chance at that number 1 pick. I'll talk about that. And then off-season recruiting trails for BYU. Sorry, Utah fans, I'm going to be talking about BYU a lot because they are the program on the rise, and Utah is kind of plateaued. I'll go over Utah eventually, but not this episode. But BYU is a program on the rise just across the country. It's talked about by a lot of different people. So I'll go over that. And then Nintendo. Why? Just a little over a decade ago, Xbox killed itself with the Xbox One, doing exactly what Nintendo is doing right now with the Switch 2. So I'll talk about that as well. But first off, thank you for being here. I appreciate each and every one of you. If you could do me a favor and like, comment, subscribe, rate 5 stars, wherever it is, however you listen, helps me out a ton. And you know the drill by now. Gets more people in here, and I want to do this for a living, so let's do it. All right. Now, the Utah Jazz. They are currently sitting at 17-64. They tip off here in about a half an hour as of me starting recording this against Minnesota. And Utah Jazz fans were a little worried online that Utah might screw everything up and win this game. Don't worry. The reason they thought that is because Anthony Edwards received a technical foul, which would have caused him to miss this game because it would have put him over the threshold for that, which is, I think, 18, is where you get a 1-game suspension. But the league has since rescinded that technical, along with a technical against Luka Doncic. Both were iffy technicals to begin with, so I'm glad the league steps in and says, nah, those aren't techs. They can't take the point back, from that free throw, but they can at least remove that technical from their air quotes. You remember when you were younger and you were told in school that, you better be on your best behavior or else that's going to go on your permanent record. And that permanent record didn't really exist? Well, it exists in the NBA. They have a permanent record of your technical fouls. So these were removed from that permanent record, and so Luka Doncic and Anthony Edwards will both be available for the final game of the regular season. So the Jazz will lose. Anthony Edwards tears the Jazz apart. He tears pretty much everybody across the league apart. But the Jazz specifically, he's really good against the Jazz, which is fantastic news for Jazz fans. So, as we look into the offseason, I've done a lot of reading so that you don't have to. ESPN's articles are just getting worse and worse, and they're not even AI written. Like, they're written by human beings. It's just the human beings they're hiring to do this are stupid. They don't do the research. They just pump something out because they have to. They have to hit X amount of words, and so they just fluff the piece with filler. It's ridiculous. Don't pay for ESPN Plus. Just don't do it. Do not do it. It is not worth your money, and it keeps going up in price. At the beginning of the year, it went up $20, and then I got another alert saying it's going up another $10. Like, give me a break, Disney. You've got enough money. Anyway, different rant for a different day. So let's go to the Jazz and the offseason. So one person I do like on ESPN is Bobby Marks. He is a former NBA GM turned talking head, and his articles, while they are not easy to read, they're not for the faint of heart, but if you know about front office hijinks and you know salary cap trays, the aprons of the salary cap, the different punishments you get, all of that stuff, it's easy to digest, but that you have to have almost like a college degree to understand that. So suffice it to say that Bobby Marks is saying the Jazz don't really have as much cap room as it appears. And that made me worried. But it only made me worried if the Jazz want to keep all of these first-round rookies that they've drafted. And I don't think they do. Cody Williams is a flop. Like, sorry, drafted that high and you can't stick in the NBA? Give me a break. The Jazz never should have drafted him. And I said that in June when they made the pick. I don't like it. Anyway, so we look at it, and there's a bunch of rookies. So there's like Walker Kessler is about to come into a negotiation for being off of his rookie deal. And then you're going to have guys like Isaiah Collier, which the Jazz will want to keep around. You can fix his turnover issues. That's easy. And then you can also coach him on how to shoot a three-point ball. So, yeah, Isaiah Collier is going to be a good player. He's not going to be great by any means, but he's going to be very good. So he's one that they will re-sign. Keontae George as well. I see him more in the Jordan Clarkson role as sixth-man instant offense type of thing. Not exactly what you want to hear when he's drafted in the lottery, but that's probably who he is. And then Colin Sexton and John Collins. So John Collins has a $27 million or so option that he can elect to pick up, which if I were him, I would pick that up because he's not getting that on the open market. So there's a lot of money still like basically claimed that the Jazz can't go out and spend. That being said, they are still really flexible because they have all of the draft capital that I've been talking about for years now, but they also have those young players on relatively cheap contracts that they can flip to a different team for a disgruntled superstar, should one pop up, like Devin Booker and the Suns. That's very tantalizing. That is a guy who's been to the NBA Finals. That is a guy who is a proven winner and can score at will. So keep an eye on that. There is no rumors around him wanting to leave. In fact, he said he wants to be a Sun for his career. I applaud him for that. But the Suns are dead in the water right now. They went all in on that big three, first with Chris Paul and then with Bradley Beal, and it did not work. They missed the playoffs this year. Kevin Durant is out the door, and you've got no draft capital. So you're nowhere if you're the Suns. So I'd be calling the Jazz and be like, hey, Devin Booker, what you got for me? You know, while doing like the thumb and two fingers rubbing together, you know, like the pay me thing. So that's something to keep an eye on. Again, I have read nothing about it. It's just pieces that I've put together in my own brain, and I know that Danny Ainge loves a deal. So that's something. And the Jazz and the Suns have a history of making trades together. That's something else that you need to look for. You have to look for front offices that have a good working relationship. So like the Jazz and the Knicks, for example, they aren't going to make a trade. They never talk to each other. But the Jazz and the Cavaliers, the Jazz and the Warriors, Lakers, Mavericks, like they've made deals with these front offices before, and so they know they'll pick up the phone when they call. That's something you have to look for. In all of these mock trades that you see, when you go onto ESPN or you go on to even like Facebook or something stupid like that nobody ever thinks about that piece. About, do these front offices actually speak to each other? Yeah, there's only 29 other ones, but of those 29, you're not really talking to everybody. You know who these people are, but you've never really sat down to hash out a deal. That's how that Lakers-Mavericks deal with Luka and Anthony Davis came to fruition, is because those guys knew each other, and they were talking about it for over a year. That's how these big trades happen. So keep an eye on that. Suns, Jazz, they've traded in the past. There is a link there, but I digress. So that is a potential superstar they could go and get if they get Cooper Flagg. Like, that could accelerate things to Mach 10. But when we look at, like, their options, even if they don't get Cooper Flagg, they could get Dylan Harper from Rutgers. While, again, I've talked about this before, while he did not get his team into the NCAA tournament, it was not his fault. He was stellar. So he is a very viable option at number 2. Yeah, his dad cracked a joke about, no, I don't want my kid going to Utah. That's a tone-deaf joke, but it was a joke. He has come out and said it was a joke. So get off his back, seriously. There's a lot of other fringe guys that they can just let walk. Like Johnny Juzang, Svi Mikhailuk. Thanks for the memories, but you're not NBA caliber. You were on the team because we needed to lose. I mean, for the Jazz, it's kind of an enviable position that they're in. With all of the draft capital, they do have cap room with an asterisk next to it. And so they have the second youngest roster in the NBA as well. And I don't want to talk about who has the youngest roster in the NBA because that's the Oklahoma City Thunder, who have done this right. And the Thunder still have so much draft capital that they could just throw at a team to get a Devin Booker. It's ridiculous. It's crazy how good Sam Presti and the Oklahoma Thunder front office, how they've played the NBA here. I'm impressed. I want there to be books written about what they did because I want to consume them. So that is where we're at with the Jazz. They lose today, 17-65 on the season. It's their first 60-loss season in franchise history, even dating back to New Orleans. So let's get those ping pong balls bouncing around in our favor. Yeah, pray to whatever deity, sacrifice whatever you need to sacrifice. Go on a hunger strike. I don't care. Let's get Cooper Flagg. So that's the future for the Jazz. Let's move it on to the Utah Hockey Club, who, yes, they were eliminated. Yes, I understand it was like a 0.1% chance that they would even make the playoffs when I last recorded, but you want to hope. And they lost to the Predators at home in the finale. Yikes. You love them, but they break your heart. That's hockey. Unless you're the Golden Knights who have made a deal with the devil to be forever good. I'm convinced that there was a deal with some sort of malaise feature out there, some sort of dark deity that they made a deal with to be good forever. But there's a few games left for the Utah Hockey Club. Let's just enjoy them. There's 2 games left. Enjoy them. This team is so much fun. It really is a fun team. And they're young. They're only going to get better. And like I've said many, many times, they will be active in free agency on the trade market because they have draft capital, but they also have cap room. So if there is a hockey star that gets disgruntled in the offseason with what their team is doing or not doing, I mean, Bill Armstrong's going to be on the phone. So this is a very exciting team. The front office knows what it's doing. Ownership trusts the front office that they know what they're doing. And they even swung a couple of trades mid-season. Like Olli Mata was such a get for them that he signed a 2-year deal. Karel Vejmelka came out of nowhere in Czechia to come and play in the NHL. Like, this front office knows what they're doing. It's one of the few front offices that actually have a dedicated goalie scouting department. Like, that's how forward-thinking this front office is. And with an ownership group led by Ryan Smith that is willing to spend, the sky's the limit. Now just fix it so we don't have to look at those stupid black banners during a game. That's my only complaint, is those stupid black banners, man. Get them out of the Delta Center. But a couple of games left, one against Nashville and the other against St. Louis. I would hope they can beat Nashville. Nashville's not very good, but when you lose to Nashville at home, you're probably going to lose to them on the road. And then St. Louis, who is my best friend's one of his favorite teams. I hate them just because they won like 14 straight games to close out this season, which effectively eliminated Utah on its own. But Clayton Keller is the leader. He is going to win. Well, he's the leader in the clubhouse to win the Triple Crown for the Utah Hockey Club. Most goals, most assists, most points. He's really, really good. And I'm glad he's the captain of the team, too. He's got the right temperament for it. And if Utah wins both games, or if they win one and they have an overtime loss, they will broach that 90-point season. It's just too bad that St. Louis, Minnesota, Colorado, Dallas, and Winnipeg are in front of them. Because I said this last week. If they were in the Eastern Conference, they would be battling for home ice. Like, that is how stinking good the West is in the NHL and the NBA. But the Eastern Conference teams need to get their stuff together, man. Like, take some talent from the West here. Give Utah a chance. Carolina tried. They traded for Mikko Rantanen, and it didn't work out, so they traded him back west. Thanks. Into the same division as Utah. Thanks. Anyway, enjoy these last 2 games. I know I will for sure. And this offseason, you guys know me. I love front office intrigue. I love trades. I love the drafts. I love it all. I love free agency. So I will be definitely keeping a pulse on what's going on with the club. And as far as the name goes, the Delta Center did a 50% off of all Utah Hockey Club merch. And then stores around the valley are doing massive sales on that merch too, which to a lot of people signals that they're not going to be called the hockey club next season. And that makes me sad. I want them to remain the hockey club. I do. It's unique. You know who you're talking about when you say the hockey club. Yeah, but whatever. I mean, the 10-year-olds will probably get their name of the Outlaws and will just be laughing stocks in the NHL forever. All right, let's move on to Real Salt Lake losing in last-minute fashion to Nashville. In Nashville. This team is frustrating. It's frustrating as all get out because when Diego Luna is in the lineup, there is potential for goals throughout the game. But the defense makes mental lapses in the worst moments. And so it's like, yes, we can score goals, but there's no way you can trust that back four, back five, back six, if you want to call it that, for making a boneheaded play at the end of regulation like they did against Nashville. My goodness. It was going to a 1-1 draw. In soccer or football, if you draw away and you win your home games, you're probably going to win the league. That's usually what is understood as the route to success. So that would have been a good draw. But Real Salt Lake blew it. Last minute, they gave up a penalty. They scored 2-1 to the bad. And, it's just so frustrating watching Real Salt Lake right now. It is so frustrating. There needs to be some sort of this transfer window when it opens up this summer. Because Diego Luna is probably gone. And so they need to replace that. Diogo Gonçalves is not the guy I thought he was going to be. So they need to figure something out there too. But overall, this team is frustrating. Again, I said come into the year with very low expectations. Real Salt Lake is one of 3 teams in the Western Conference to never have drawn so far this season after 8 games, which is an achievement in and of itself. And they are currently 3 wins to 5 losses. Yeah. It's going to be a rough summer, I think, out in Sandy. All right, let's move it along to BYU men's basketball and the recruiting trail. So, yes, they did lose Dallin Hall. They did lose Yegor Demon and Cannon Catchings. Yegor Demon went pro. The other 2 hit the transfer portal. But they did get. So they got Robert Wright III from Baylor, who will be a sophomore this coming season. And here's some numbers for you. Against the better teams, he scored 22 points against Connecticut, the defending champs during the season, 22 against BYU, 24 against Kansas, and 19 against Mississippi State. That's pretty good. He was only getting better as the season went along, which is exactly what you want from a freshman. So he's coming in to a team that has already recruited quite well. They got the top recruit in Utah, AJ DeBansa, who is also the top recruit in the country, Xavier Staten, the center that has been playing with AJ DeBansa, and Chamberlain Burgess, a 4-star, top 100 recruit power forward from Orem High. So Rob Wright joins that recruiting class of 2 4-stars and a 5-star. This has never happened in the history of BYU, and that's why I'm talking about it. BYU basketball recruiting is normally so boring. It's like they get some 2 or 3-star guy from Skyline or Olympus, and that's big news. Or they get some international kid, not Yegor Demon level, but Rafael Araujo, if for those of you who remember him, who was a lottery pick, by the way. He was in the NBA draft, drafted by the Raptors, and he was before his time. He was a big man who could shoot out on the outside. But anyway, I digress. It's exciting down in Provo. It really is to be a BYU fan. So the inside of me that suffered for about 20 years, BYU basketball never being any good except for one-offs with Jimmer Fredette, this is warming my heart. The kid who was abused by Utah fans, both adults and kids alike, and yes, abuse is the right word. I'm not over-exaggerating there. It's warming the heart. The cockles of this old heart here are being warmed by what's happening in Provo right now. Of the top basketball recruits in Utah, the top 5, BYU has 3. The other 2 went out of state. JJ Mandaquit went to Washington, and Isaiah Harwell went to Houston. That's pretty darn good. That's pretty darn good. Because usually the top talent in basketball in Utah goes out of state. It doesn't even go to the U. It goes out of state. So this is great. And then speaking of recruiting, BYU football, not to be outdone, although it is being outdone because AJ DeBance is the best recruit in basketball, but BYU got the top overall recruit in the state of Utah, tight end Brock Harris, who is a 4-star tight end, ranked 39th by Rivals nationally and 37th by 24/7. Those are the 2 recruiting services I trust. So average 38 for those math whizzes out there. For the first time since 2008, BYU landed the top overall recruit in the state of Utah. Usually where these recruits go in the past, USC, they usually go to like this SEC, like Georgia, Alabama. Not even really Florida comes over here, but like Michigan, Ohio State, Oregon, even UCLA back in the day. But not this year. This year he's staying in state. He is the third highest ranked recruit, to commit to BYU, behind Ben Olsen in 2002, who now covers the Cougars, which is kind of funny, and lineman Ofa Mohitao, which nobody remembers him, but that was 2003. This is incredible. There's a renaissance happening in Provo, and I've suffered for this. The fan in me has suffered for this. And now the guy who covers Utah sports is very excited because he has something to talk about. There's something exciting to talk about. Both BYU football and BYU basketball will be ranked in the preseason, I think for the first time ever, at the same time. That is why I'm so excited about this. Sorry, Utah fans, but you had your time in the sun in the early 2000s and 2010s. Now it's BYU's turn again. And not even again, really. I mean, there was football, and then there was that one season of Jimmermania, but then that was it. So this is great. And BYU, the program is getting their recruiting system, the recruiting side of it is doing such a good job of pitching the university, because there is a stigma with BYU. Sorry, BYU fans, but there is. But the way that they've changed it, they've changed the narrative around the school, where these kids who are not of the faith of that school can just go and focus on ball. They can go and focus on basketball. They can focus on football. There's not going to be any parties happening. You're not really going to get approached by women. You can just go and ball. You got time in the rest of your life to do whatever else you want. If you want to get to the pros, Provo's a pretty good spot because you're not going to get distracted. And now they have coaching staffs and pipelines that will get you to the pros. That's what Lavelle Edwards did in the 80s. He was a master of that. He didn't have the recruiting chops or even the funding that this current coaching staff has, but he was a master of saying, you come here, all you have to do is focus on football and school. That's it. We'll get you graduated and we'll get you into the NFL. That's how guys like Trevor Maddich, Jim McMahon got to BYU. And so now it's happening again. And yeah, I'm sorry, Utah fans, it always goes back to Lavelle Edwards. But just like Utah, it will go back to Kyle Whittingham. It's the same thing. So I'm very excited about being able to talk about this, about having this to cover instead of saying, well, BYU's a developmental school. They get those 2- and 3-star recruits and they develop them into 4 and 5 stars, and then they get into the pros. No, that's not going to be the thing anymore. BYU is going to be attracting talent. And if Rob Wright, AJ DeBanza, all of those guys coming in, Xavier Staten, Brock Harris, come on, man. And who knows what's going to happen when the next transfer portal opens up, who they'll get in. But I'm very encouraged by what I'm seeing with BYU. Utah, Kyle Whittingham, has earned the right when to walk away, but until he does, oh boy. Oh boy. It'll be rough. It'll be rough. And then I think you have the right guy in Alex Jensen. It's the same sort of hire that BYU did with Kevin Young, where there is that NBA experience, and then there's a pipeline in there. I mean, Alex Jensen coached Donovan Mitchell. He coached Rudy Gobert. He coached Luka Doncic. He's coaching Anthony Davis right now. So there is hope. It's not going to be as instant of a turnaround, I don't think, because there's not much in the cupboard for Alex Jensen to turn around in one season like Kevin Young did with Mark Pope leaving. And Mark Pope left. He didn't get fired. So that's that. All right, so let's move it along to Nintendo. Nintendo keeps stepping in it. And it's very elitist. It's very 1% language. And I hate it. I hate it. So, what did they do this week? Matt, why are you angry at them again? You went on quite a rant last week. Well, I'm glad I asked myself that. Let's just look at the quote from Doug Bowser, by the way. Doug Bowser is the head of Nintendo America. I think the only reason he got that job is not because of any qualifications, but because his last name is Bowser. Nintendo just thought it was funny. Anyway, I digress. Let me read you this quote. And for you elder gamers like myself, it might remind you of 2013, 2014, and what Doug Matrick said about Xbox. Let's dive into it. Quote, as we look at Nintendo Switch 2, and you think about the feature sets that I talked about, we believe that the pricing is appropriate, $500, for the value of the machine and the gameplay experience overall. We recognize there are some people that may not be able to afford the Nintendo Switch 2 price point. That's why we wanted to make the other Switch platforms available, so people still have an opportunity to come into our gaming universe, be a part of these characters in these worlds, and see value, if you will, in whatever rung of the platform they come in. Let me translate that for you. That was a lot of words just to say, if you can't afford it, we got a cheaper option for you. And we don't want you to buy the newer version because you can't afford it. What? Let's flash back. 2013, Don Matrick of Xbox. When the Xbox One was facing criticism because of the console's initial mandatory online connectivity, he famously said, quote, we have a product for people who aren't able to get some form of connectivity. It's called the Xbox 360. Because of that comment and because of Microsoft's attitude towards gamers, Xbox got killed by PlayStation 4. And it is continued on to this day. The PlayStation 5 is killing the Xbox Series consoles. So, Nintendo is stepping in it. Nintendo is lucky because they have the fanboys who will just buy whatever's thrown in front of them. Those fanboys have been lucky that all of those games have been fantastic. Like The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, both games fantastic. 10 out of 10 on both. Mario Kart games, fantastic. Mario games, fantastic. Kirby games even, fantastic. So they're lucky. But they're pushing it. And I don't know if they're aware at Nintendo of the geopolitics that are going on. But we're kind of sick and tired of being pushed around by C-suites and the 1% telling us how we should think, how we should buy. So there will be a backlash against this. But it still will be, and is still forecasted to be, even with everything going on, to be the best-selling console of all time. That's too bad. So I'm mad about this. Not because I won't be able to afford it. I'll barely be able to afford it, but I will be able to. This flashes me back to when I was a kid and my family just couldn't afford it. Just couldn't. And I was left out of the initial launch of Halo just because we couldn't afford it. It was no fault of anyone. I'm not blaming anybody. We just couldn't afford it. Oh, well, I'm blaming Microsoft here, but anyway. And so I had FOMO as a kid. And thank goodness for my set of friends, it was never a big deal to them. I had friends who just said, yeah, come over, let's play. I was lucky. Not everybody is that lucky. And so you're causing just stress for families who can't even really afford that kind of stress. And so Nintendo, you got to get over yourself. And Reggie Fils-Aime, the former head of Nintendo, had to fight tooth and nail when the Wii came out for it to package Wii Sports, one of the most popular games on Wii. Everybody knows about Wii Golf, Wii Bowling, Wii Baseball, because of Wii Sports being packaged with it. Shigeru Miyamoto, the CEO of Nintendo, did not want to do that, but Reggie did. That's why everybody loves Reggie. And now that Reggie's not there fighting those battles, there's nobody in the room fighting on behalf of the consumer. So my anger and outrage is about these multi-million dollar earning people, just their salaries, not what they bring into the company, treating us like trash. And I'm sick of it. All right, that's the show this week, everybody. Thank you all so much for listening. I will be back next week to do a post-mortem on the Jazz and the Hockey Club, I guess. And then looking forward to the future of both clubs, seeing what's going to happen. So thank you all for being here, and I will see you all next week when we spelunk back into the Mad Cave.